Wow, this is going to be an interesting one because I can't tell you too much, but I did want to give you an update on our test we have now. We're testing plug-in filters, like filters that you just plug in a wall socket and it should filter out some noise, which should improve the quality of the reproduction in your hi-fi system. We use these plugs for years now. We have the Kemp SNS plug. We've used it for years. This is the version we have, the old one. We also have the new one. We use the Isotek Isoplug now for years. We have Isotek Aquarius filters. We have the Titan. And I think they do a great job. But I never actually really properly tested plugs like this. Yes, we use them, but it's more like a psychological thing. I have the feeling that it's cleaner and that it works and that I should use it because I have a lot of LED lights in the listening room and we have LED lights all over the place. And LED does produce some really nasty noise. You can actually measure it. We did on our scopes and it's just a bunch of garbage that goes on the grid. So we should filter to get the maximum effect or the maximum performance out of our system, right? Well, the Titan and the Aquarius we did properly test. Well, at least we did it with our ears because we're still developing a measurement setup for filters. It's really hard. And I know that ASR does some testing, also tested the PS Audio and the Aquarius Evo 3 and even the, where is it? Oh, here. The Furutech NCF Clearline. And I know Amir does a great job. I definitely respect the guy. He knows a lot about audio and he knows a lot about measurements, but I think that cables and filters are really hard to measure. The speaker cable test took us quite some time to properly set up a measurement environment and get some coherent results. You can't just test one cable, I think, and you can't just test one plug, I think. That's my opinion. That's how I do it. And that's why we have now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plugs, if I'm correct. We have 2 Kemp SNS plugs, the old one and the new one. We have the Isotek Isoplug. We have the IFI AC Purifier. We have 2 products from Ansuz. We have the Sparkz and the Sparkz TC2. And we have the Clearline NCF from Furutech. And we have the Akiko tuning stick. Now, one of my problems with the hi-fi industry is that they don't give any specifications on filters. They don't give any specifications on cables, and they give just a bunch of specs on the amplifiers and the A converters and speakers that just don't help the consumer at all. I do agree that a lot of consumers just don't give a peep about specifications. They just want to know how it sounds. Great, then just don't read the specifications. But if you sell a filter, for example, like this is the only one that has some specs. Why doesn't it specify in which band it works? Because we measured them all already. I made some measurements like filter response. We did it on the Prism D-scope and on our new spectrum analyzer. And you will see that some filters work within a certain bandwidth. That's logical because it has a circuit inside that works in a certain bandwidth. And you see that some products don't do anything up to 1.5 megahertz even. So those products are, in my opinion, how do I say this friendly? They will cost you a lot of money for nothing. And that's I don't think that's fair to the consumer. If you sell a product that doesn't do anything, and you say it on a website that it does some filtering and that it clears up your sound and stuff like that, and I can't measure anything up to 1.5 megahertz, then in my opinion, that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. But let's get back. I think they should specify what they do in what bandwidth, at least with filters, and even which load you should apply or for which load it is designed. Because a filter is completely dependent on the load. If I load the Titan with a Class A amp or with a Class AB amp or with a certain wattage, its behavior will differ between Class D, Class A, Class AB, or what load you apply to it. And it's clear if you put it on a spectrum analyzer, you will see a difference in how it reacts to the amplifier. And the same is with same counts for this. And I can't read anything on their websites, nothing at all. That's something that struck me. And the same is for cables. You don't see any specifications about conductance, about inductance, about capacitance. And I know that the average consumer doesn't give a peep about that, but if someone does care, he won't find anything. But we're talking about filters. So the test setup will be the same as with the speaker cables. I measure them. I make a top 3. My top 3 I will write down, and Martijn and Jung will listen to the filters, and we have to determine on which device we will test it. I think we'll do it on the DA converter because it has the highest resolution, and I think it will be the most. I think there will have the most impact. I will swap the plugs. And I know we did get a lot of feedback on our last speaker cable test that they could see which cable was playing because I swapped them and it was clear, but they didn't look. Believe me, they want to do this test blind as well. And the same will be for the plugs. They want to do a blind test and I want them to do a blind test. I will swap the plugs and they will write down what they hear. If they hear anything, and I'm quite skeptical about the plugs that don't give anything on the scopes and on the spectrum analyzer, and that's why I don't want to listen, because I have a prejudice towards certain products in this range. So let's see what candidates we have. We have the IFI AC Purifier. There it is. We have the Kemp SNS plug. Another Kemp SNS plug. We have the Isotek Isoplug. We have the Ansuz Sparkz, the normal one, with the Tesla coil inside. We have the Ansuz Sparkz TC2 with the Tesla coils inside and some circuitry. Not sure what it does. I can't read anything about it on the website what the circuitry does, but I will find out. We have the Furutech NCF Clearline with, well, some coils inside. Looks very much the same as the Ansuz. They have the Tesla coils. These have some coils inside as well. I did measure the capacitance, and it's quite the same. It's around 2 picofarads, I think. Not sure what it should do. Then we have the Akiko tuning stick. And this is funny because they have stated on their website that it actually does something measurable. They recorded something, I think. But, you know, the problem there... Anyone that measures knows that the results are very dependent on the test setup. My measurements are not directly comparable to measurements of, let's say, ASR. Amir has a audio precision. I have a prism. Amir could use some other cables or some other setup to determine the response of the filters. He may use another FFT. He may use another bit depth. I don't know. As long as I don't know his settings, in the audio precision, I can't compare his results to mine. Even a friend of mine who owns a Prism D-scope as well can have some difference in results as I do. If my FFT settings are different than his, I can't compare. And the same accounts for the spectrum analyzer. If I change a setting, I can have a completely different noise floor. So these measurements on the website don't say anything because I don't know his test setup, I don't know his settings, I don't even know the scale of the graphs. So it's funny they say it made a measurable difference. Well, I don't know what settings are. We will publish all the results, of course, on the website alphaaudio.nl and alphaaudio.net. I think we will be finished in around 2 weeks. The measurements are almost finished. We'll check them with a friend of mine on Wednesday, this Wednesday. So that's the, 24th of August, 2022. And then we will do the blind tests in I think 1.5 weeks or 2 weeks, and then we'll publish it, of course. If you like these kinds of tests and if you like the effort we do, you can support us on Patreon. We really need support from our audience because the industry is getting tougher and tougher. Also on us because we actually do measure stuff and they don't always like that. So if you like these, support us on Patreon and of course subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.